What's up YouTube, it's Ryan from AnnihilatorMTG here, and I'm back again with some more Modern. This week I'm going to be playing a user-requested deck, and that deck would be Red-Green Titanshift with Wish. Now as some of you may know, my best friend and tournament training partner Joe was an avid fan of Titanshift. He ran this deck all the time, and it was really consistent, and now we get to see what this Wish package can really do. The core of the deck itself is mostly unchanged. We've got loads of ramp in the form of Search for Tomorrow, Farseek, and Steve. These cards, along with our high land count, ensures that getting to 7 mana and beyond is a simple and inevitable task. In addition to those, we're also running a pair of Dryads. This card is incredible. It turns every land on our side of the field into a mountain, including our Valakuts, and by extension greatly enhances Scapeshift as a whole. To make things even better, it also allows us to play an additional land per turn, which can represent either ramp or burn in this deck. Speaking of which, it would be foolish not to run a full playset of Lightning Bolt. Not only can Lightning Bolt act as excellent spot removal, but it often helps us get past that 20 life threshold before casting a 7-land Scapeshift. We're also running 2 copies of the ever-flexible Bonecrusher Giant. This card gives us a mid-range edge to our playstyle and can oftentimes be a massive distraction to our opponent, especially in a control matchup. Now let's talk about the aforementioned Wish. This card acts as Scapeshift copies 4 through 7. You heard that correctly. In order for this to work, we need to drop a copy of Scapeshift from the main board and add it to the side. Some of you may be a little apprehensive about this, but let me assure you, this is 100% worth it. Beyond just tutoring for Scapeshift, Wish grants us a world of flexibility that is only really limited to what you want to include in the sideboard. From graveyard hate to artifact and enchantment removal, and even really strong cards like Chalice of the Void. The sky is truly the limit on this one, and your pre-sideboard games are going to start to feel a lot like post-sideboard games, which is pretty nuts. I've played with and against this deck enough to know just how strong it is, so let's not waste any time here and head straight into the first match. Alrighty, looks like we found our opponent. Best of luck to you, my friends, and this hand seems good enough. Let's get things rolling with a Stomping Ground and see what they're playing. They lead off with a Bloodstained Mire, which they crack for a Blood Crypt. Here comes an Inquisition. I have to assume that Dryad is the pick, because Wish and Scapeshift are somewhat redundant. Ooh, okay, they take the Wish. We draw a Bonecrusher Giant, not bad. Think we'll just play a basic and hold up the removal. Before anything else, they play a Thoughtseize, this time taking the Dryad, and while that is annoying, them being stuck on a single land is really good for us. During their end step, we'll cast the Stomp, taking them down to 13. There's another mountain, might as well play it. Then we'll cast the Bonecrusher Giant and start to put the screws on. Not out of the game yet, as they play and crack a Scalding Tarn, weirdly enough grabbing an island. That makes me second guess any potential shadows. Either way, they cast an Expressive Iteration, followed by a Mishra's Bauble, which they crack straight away. Alright, we drew another Wish. Let me check out the sideboard real quick. There's some potential for Chalice of the Void next turn, so let's just play our Valakut and swing in. They're at 8. Up next, they play a Polluted Delta and nothing else. The great thing about this Bonecrusher is that it really limits their ability to get anything done. We see Valakut number 2. Let's attack once again. Before damage, they crack their fetch for another basic, only to cast a Fatal Push. That'll ding them for 2. The Bonecrusher dies. Now we'll jam our Stomping Ground and cast the Wish. This resolving doesn't mean much, as they can easily counter the sideboard card. Either way, let's cast the Chalice, and it resolves, wow. Until they find a K command, this should keep us at a very comfortable life total. Unfortunately for them, they just play another land and nothing else. There's a Lightning Bolt. I guess we'll just play the Valakut and hope to hit another land. Keeping things rolling as they cast an Expressive Iteration, followed by a tapped Blood Crypt. That's good news. We draw Titan, let's cast it. The spell resolves as we grab some mountains, and with the triggers on the stack, they scoop it up. Nice. Sideboarding in this matchup is going to be a little weird. Bonecrusher Giant was incredibly useful in that last game, but I'm not entirely sure if that'll be the case every time. With that in mind, let's cut the 2 Bonecrushers, that way we can bring in the Veils. Looks good to me. This hand is a bit awkward, but at the same time, we have some really good ramp, and we'll give it a shot. They get things started with a Scalding Tarn, which they crack for a Blood Crypt. Then they cast a Ragavan. We draw Bolt number 2. Not thrilled about Valakut being our only red source, but we gotta play it. This'll give them a free attack, hitting us for 2 and exiling a land, followed by a DRC. Then they play and crack a Polluted Delta, this time getting a Steam Vents. Ooh, and they jam a Kroxa. Think we'll just bin a Farseek. The Kroxa dies. Drawing a Cinder Glade, not bad. Let's play the basic and jam Steve. Creature-based ramp is incredibly useful because ideally, this dude is going to keep their Ragavan from getting another trigger. Before anything else, they swing in with a team. Let's block their Ragavan and sack the Steve, grabbing a mountain. Then they play and crack a Scalding Tarn, finding another Blood Crypt. That'll give them just enough mana to add their Lurrus to hand. We hit a Scapeshift. Let's cast the Farseek, choosing a Stomping Ground. On their next turn, they attack us once again. Before damage, we'll bolt the Ragavan. After combat, they play an untapped Watery Grave and cast their Lurrus. It resolves. Then they replay the Ragavan that just died. In response, we'll Lightning Bolt the Lurrus. Ragavan will resolve as they pass the turn. Drawing a Search, not bad. Let's cast it. The Mountain will come in untapped. This gives us just enough mana to cast Wish into a Tormod's Crypt. As is tradition, they swing in immediately, exiling a Mountain. After damage, they play another copy of Ragavan. This is weird. Due to the legendary rule, on resolution, they have to pick a copy to keep while the other hits the bin. If I'm not mistaken, we don't regain priority after that, which would give them exactly 5 cards for their Kroxa. Even if I'm wrong about that, sacking the Tormod's Crypt feels like the move here. The spell resolves, and they send it back. We draw another land. Perfect. Let's play it. Then we'll tap out and cast the Scapeshift, and it looks like they've seen enough. GG's, opponent. Okay, looks like we found our opponent. Best of luck to you, my friend. And this hand is a little weak, but probably good enough. Let's get things rolling with an untapped Stomping Ground into a suspended Search for tomorrow. They jam a Misty Rainforest and immediately pass. There's a Titan. I think we'll just play another fetch and hold up the Stomp. During our end step, they crack their fetch for a Triome, only to match our fetch and suspend a Footfalls. Okay, so in this matchup, we really can't afford to durdle around. With that said, casting the Stomp doesn't do enough right now, so we'll just fetch for a Cinder Glade. The Search for tomorrow will come off Suspend, netting us a Mountain. Oh wow, and we drew a Wish. This is one of those matchups where Wish really shines. Like, it's almost staggering how good it is. So let's just play our fetch, then cast it. This way we can jam a 0-mana Chalice of the Void. In response, they crack their fetch for another Triome, and it looks like the Chalice resolves. At this phase of the game, they're going to be looking for a Petty Theft or any main board artifact hate, which I doubt they're running. They do find another land, however, as they cast a Bonecrusher Giant. This is how you know it's a race. On their end step, we'll crack our fetch for a Stomping Ground, only to draw another Titan. Let's go land number 5, then cast Stomp, targeting their face. That brings them down to 16. Then we'll follow it up with the Giant itself, and we should be good to go. Before anything else, they play an untapped Sacred Foundry, then attack us for 4. I don't think we need the block, so that'll leave us at 12. We draw a Search, let's play our basic, then we'll attack with the Bonecrusher. Ooh, that's very good. They cast an Ice during the attack step to take away one of our lands. The attack will go through, so at this point, I think we're just going to hardcast the Search and grab a basic forest. After which, they hit us with a Fire. It's 10 all. On their turn, they tap out for an Omnath. This is getting a little scary. Then they combo into a fetch land, cracking it for a basic and getting some triggers. With the extra mana, they cast a Dryad. That's interesting. Then we see another Fire, attacking us with a Bonecrusher and bringing our life total down to 4. Alright, moment of truth. And we hit a Wish. Excellent. Let's cast it. Then we'll jam the Scapeshift. The spell resolves, and they scoop it up. Nice. Sideboarding in this matchup is relatively straightforward. We're just going to cut a couple of lightning bolts to make room for the 2 Veil of Summers. There are some other spells that we might want to bring in, but in all honesty, I'd rather not complicate things too much. Looks good to me. Don't think we'll be going with a no-lander. Let's try again. This hand is not exciting, but it'll have to do. Let's ship a land and see what happens. They lead things off with a Wooded Foothills and nothing else. We draw a Mountain. Let's play an untapped Stomping Ground and suspend the Search. During our end step, they crack their fetch for a Triome, only to play another one and immediately pass. Absolutely drowning in mana. If it makes sense in any deck, it'll be this one. So let's just play another fetch and continue to be patient. Once again, they crack their fetch, this time grabbing a Steam Vents. Then they hit us with a Stomp. We're at 16. On their next turn, they play and crack a fetch for a basic, and wow, they managed to find a Teferi. Before it resolves, let's crack our fetch for a Cinder Glade. Then they uptick and send it back. Unfortunately, this means our Search is going to immediately fizzle. Although we do draw a Titan, that's pretty good. For now, we'll play our basic and cast the Dryad. That'll allow us to jam another fetch. Oddly enough, answering this Dryad is going to be incredibly important, as its interaction with Valakut is backbreaking to say the least. Speaking of Valakut, they just play one of their own. That's hilarious. Then they cast a Shardless Agent, cascading into some Rhinos. Ooh, and they even decide to bounce the agent with their Teferi. We're seeing some excellent value here. So we draw a Wish. The keen-eyed among you are going to realize that Wish into Scapeshift is beyond lethal. lethal, but the scary part, at least in my mind, is the potential for a Force of Negation. With that in mind, I think we just have to cast the Titan. It resolves, so we'll grab double Valakut, and because these 4 triggers won't be lethal, I think we actually want to target the board, at least for the most part. This will take out a Rhino, the Teferi, and hit them for 3. And it looks like they've seen enough. GG's, opponent. Alrighty, looks like we found our opponent. Best of luck to you, my friend, and this hand seems good enough. They get things started with a Mishra's Bauble, which they crack immediately, followed by a Polluted Delta. We draw basic Mountain. I think we'll just play the Valakut and send it back. Before their next turn, they crack their Delta for a Breeding Pool, then they cast Consider, bidding a Snapcaster in the process. Up next, they play an untapped Watery Grave and nothing else. You don't see Sultai every day. There's another Bonecrusher Giant. Let's play an untapped Stomping Ground and cast the Steve. In response, they hit it with a counter. Interesting. Bad news on the following turn, though, as they draw and pass straight through. Can't win the control game with no mana. Either way, we draw Search. Think we'll just play the basic and cast Farseek, grabbing a Stomping Ground. It's gonna take a little bit to get things rolling, but we have a ton of inevitability with this deck, keeping things competitive as they play a Polluted Delta and continue to wait. This means that Archmage's Charm is almost assuredly in play. Hitting back-to-back searches, might as well play one of them. Grabbing a basic Mountain, that'll come in untapped, so we can also cast the Farseek. Going Stomping Ground one more time. During our end step, they crack their Polluted Delta for a basic island. Then they flash out a Snapcaster, targeting Consider, which they cast straight away, bidding an Abrupt Decay. Normally very useless in this matchup, but these Bone Crushers are fierce. On the following turn, they attack us for 2, and unfortunately for them, the mana troubles are back. We draw Windswept Heath, let's play it, then we'll cast Stomp on their Snapcaster. It resolves, then we'll jam the Giant itself. Since this resolved too, I'm inclined to believe that they're more removal heavy than counter heavy. Here comes the Charm though. Those 2 extra cards might be just what they need. After spending some time in the tank, they jam a Polluted Delta and continue to play reactive, fine by me. Let's crack our fetch, grabbing a basic Forest. Then we're gonna get a little aggressive with this Stomp. It resolves, taking them down to 12. Ooh, and we draw a Scapeshift. Excellent. Let's swing in with a Bonecrusher. Before damage, they crack their fetch for another Watery Grave. Then they hit it with a Fatal Push, not without some pain though, as they go down to 9 life. Let's see if we can bait them out by casting the other Bonecrusher. Nothing? Alright, guess we can try the Scapeshift. Ah, and they're too smart for that. Oh well, that gets countered. Up next, they play a Thing in the Ice, very interesting, followed by a Scalding Tarn, hitting another Titan, that's huge. Before casting anything, let's swing in with a Giant, and they answer it with a Murderous Cut. Wow, really taking me back with that one. They're at 7. No idea if this is going to work, but let's cast Titan number 1. In response, they crack their fetch for a basic island, then they counter with a Drown, sure. In the meantime, let's just suspend a search and wait it out. Getting them down to 6 is a small victory, however, so I really don't mind that exchange. They play a tap land and send it back, notably only having 2 cards in their hand, drawing a Steve. Because of the search in the wings, I'm actually inclined to play Steve. If they counter, no big deal. If they don't, they basically lose. It resolves. During our end step, they cast a Memory Deluge, then they untap and add their Lurrus to hand, followed by a Mishra's Bauble, which they crack immediately, finally playing a Polluted Delta and giving it back to us. On their end step, let's sack the Steve for a Mountain. They're at 3. Moment of truth, here comes the search. They counter it with a Charm. That'll flip the Thing in the Ice. We draw Dryad. Let's cast the Prime Time. It resolves, grabbing a Valakut and a Cinder Glade, and that'll do it. Nice. So this is a matchup where Big Chandra might be pretty good. However, I don't actually think that I'm going to bring her in. For now, we're just going to cut 2 copies of Lightning Bolt so that we can bring in the Veils. If we have a ton of trouble in the long game, then we can bring in the Chandras. This looks good though. We should be able to make this hand work. Yeah, let's give it a shot. They start things off with a Polluted Delta and nothing else. Drawing a Search. We'll treat that like a true 3-drop for now and just play the Valakut. Before their next turn, they crack their fetch for a Breeding Pool. Then they play a Botanical Sanctum, followed by a Mishra's Bauble. And here comes the Thing in the Ice. I respect it. On our upkeep, they crack their Bauble. Then we draw a Cinder Glade. Excellent. Let's play and crack a Wooded Foothills, grabbing a Stomping Ground. Then we'll cast Steve number 1. Second verse, same as the first, as they play another Botanical Sanctum. They add their Lurrus to hand and send it back. During their end step, we'll sack the Steve for a basic Mountain. Ooh, okay, we hit a Prime Time. To maximize this Cinder Glade, we're going to hardcast the Search for tomorrow. It resolves, so we'll grab a Mountain. That allows our Cinder Glade to come in untapped. Then we can cast Steve number 2, and it's only a matter of time now. Looks like they found a black source in the form of Polluted Delta. Then they cast Thing number 2. Let's sack the Steve for another mountain. There's a Stomping Ground. This is risky, but let's just cast the Prime Time. Oh wow, and it actually resolves? Okay. Let's pick double Valakut. Then we'll jam the Stomping Ground, netting us 3 triggers, 2 of which will hit one of their creatures. On our end step, they crack their Delta for a Watery Grave. Alright, now we're talking. They cast a Consider, make that 2, followed by a Dark Slick Shores. That's a bit underwhelming. We draw Mountain. Let's not waste any time and just attack, grabbing Valakut number 4 and a Cinder Glade, and it looks like they've seen enough. GG's. And there you have it. Wish Titanshift, or whatever you want to call it, is really, really good. I definitely think that there's certain parts of the main board that could be changed to your liking. Bonecrusher Giant in particular really worked in my opinion, so I'm happy with that inclusion. Some of the sideboard though is likely not as powerful as you might hope or expect, and that's simply due to budgetary restrictions, so I apologize for that. I know that Scapeshift isn't everyone's cup of tea, but this Wish package adds a really fun element to the archetype. If you want to go with a silver bullet approach, that seems to work wonderfully. But I also believe that if you wanted to include a bunch of nutty stuff, that would be incredibly fun as well. If you like my content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. This stuff really does help, so thank you. And as always, stay safe out there and have a good one.